talking about Deep Space, a 1988 movie directed by Fred Olen Ray, and it's got a pretty good cast of well-known, or at least kind of well-known in B-movie circles, character actors, including Charles Napier, Anne Turkel, Bo Svensson, Ron Glass, and even Julie Newmar, one-time Catwoman. And this came out the same year, I believe, as the Blob remake, and is surprisingly similar in some ways. The story, it focuses on this government experiment where the government are trying to create some type of biological weapon, and for some reason they kind of sent it out to space to, store it really. But it ends up crash landing in this kind of small American kind of town somewhere, city, and it's up to cop Charles Napier and Ron Glass to try and find out what's going on, as this thing seems to be killing the townsfolk and leaving a gruesome mess behind. Now, it sounds relatively humdrum in the plot, and in some ways that it is, but I gotta say, this is one of those little gem B movies that are extremely fun to watch. And I would put the majority of this down to Charles Napier. It's extremely likeable, but hard-boiled kind of police detective, and his kind of relationship with his co-workers, including Ron Glass as his detective partner, really. There is some genuinely funny kind of wisecracks and kind of funny kind of lines of dialogue. His kind of real stereotypical portrayal of kind of like an 80s B-movie cop is classic. It's absolutely hilarious. And he's when you're watching this, you kind of realise he was always quite an underrated kind of action hero, kind of tough guy style actor, and he's fantastic in this. A really, really watchable, a character that is gruff but very, very likeable and quite hilarious as well. So he's fantastic, but the rest of the cast I think do a great job. He's kind of like back and forth with his partner played by Ron Glass is great. I love his kind of love interest played by Anne Turkel, who's this kind of other pretty much just as kind of capable female cop as well, and obviously the captain played by Bo Svensson, who doesn't kind of get on with all that sort of stuff. Great kind of character actors doing their stuff in this kind of this B movie. Now, the other thing as well is the creature effects are in some ways, there are some issues with the creature effects as we'll tell, but they're fairly impressive. The design kind of looks a little bit like the alien xenomorph design to a point. But it's obviously inspired by that, and I would say maybe The Thing as well. It has these tendrils that kind of shoot out from its maw and its gut that kind of wrap around people and kind of pull it into the gaping maw within its kind of like chest area. It's pretty kind of gruesome stuff and some fun effects. I mean, we'll come on to the negatives, but it's a little wobbly. But for a kind of 80s low budget B movie, I kind of liked it. I remember seeing this movie back in the VHS days, and I thought it was great, and I loved it. Having rewatched it for this review, it's one of these ones I had forgotten about to a certain degree. But I think it's kind of a lot of the locations are kind of just set in 1988 America. So location-wise, it's not particularly exciting, but it's just a really fun kind of monster movie. We've also got kind of two smaller monsters as well. These kind of like little kind of mini versions as well. And again, the puppet work I think is very, very fun for a kind of a low budget late 80s movie. It almost feels somewhat like a kind of a 70s story, but with kind of the 80s style kind of aesthetic in some ways. So I kind of quite enjoyed it. And we also have the kind of, obviously, the government conspiracy going on and things like that. So there's also there's some fun interplay between those sort of characters as well. And it's a relatively kind of fast-paced movie with some not overly gory deaths, but some kind of like fun sort of sequences where these kind of creatures are killing as well. And it's just a lot of fun. Where this maybe falls down a little bit, I guess it's just overall cheesiness. There are a few things as well. We talked about the monster effects, and it's a fun design, but obviously you can critique it and say that thing is just like not moving. It's like too much of a big kind of like floppy kind of monster that looks like it couldn't move 10 feet, let alone kind of evade the police and the army for all this kind of time. So yeah, so if you can, that's a little bit nitpicky, to be honest. I think some of the designs around the monster don't really work as well. For some reason, it's always got a strobe light going off in the background whenever we see the monster, and it's like there's no apparent reason for it. I'm guessing it's just like cool 80s monster effects, and there's always like dry ice and stuff like that as well. So it kind of looks a little silly sometimes, I think, and you know, it's fun, but in this kind of silly sort of way. There are some unresolved plot issues as well. They make a big thing about having the kind of the army try and sort of like cover it up, and they'd be the cause of it. But we, at a certain point, we never see them again, and there's never really any kind of comeback into what actually kind of happened in regards to the army. They're just like, right, end of the movie, they've got the climax involving the creature, that's it. No kind of like, you know, resolving it in regards to the kind of the secondary plot involving the kind of the government trying to kind of cover it up, and, you know, butting heads with the kind of the local police and things like that. By today's standards, obviously the action is kind of cheesy, but I gotta say this movie is a lot of fun, and I think it's one of the kind of certainly the more underrated kind of 80s science fiction kind of horror films. It's you know, it's not particularly memorable, I think, because it's just this Earth setting, and the story isn't anything to write home about, to be honest. It's kind of just a monster on the loose, police chasing it story without any kind of real originality in its kind of sort of storytelling. But it's such great character work, such kind of, you know, likeable actors doing some great work, and Charles Napier looks like he's having an absolute blast, covered in goo, slime and bits of like latex kind of fighting this thing. I bet he had an absolute blast making this movie. I can just imagine it. I would check this one out. Yeah, it's not going to be, if you don't like cheesy monster films, because it is super cheesy. Everyone's kind of super macho. There's clearly no no respect for kind of the rules, or, you know, at the beginning of the film we see Charles Napier and Ron Glass's character essentially kill some like looter or something, and they just kind of like sweep it under the rug. He was, you know, he was stealing Halloween masks, so we just killed him. And obviously, it's kind of like today you're thinking, you know, that seems a little unnecessary, but you know, this is the 80s. Yeah, I would check it out if you like a good old gooey monster movie. 6 out of 10 I'm going to give it. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.